Hello everyone, welcome to Kumari's Kids channel. Today's story is going to be about Puss in the Boots. Once upon a time, there was a miller who had three sons. When he died, he left his mill to the eldest son, his ass to the second son, and his cat to the youngest, who had always been his favorite. The eldest son resolved to live together, but they would not let their brother live with them because he had only a cat. So the poor lad was very sorrowful and wondered what what he should to do to get his bread. While he was sitting thinking about it, Puss jumped on the table and touched him with her paw. My dear master, she said, do not fret. I will get your living for you. Only you must buy me a pair of boots and give me a bag. The miller's son had very little money, but he thought it such a wonderful thing to hear a cat talk that he could not refuse her request. So he took Puss to the shoemaker's and got him to make her a very smart pair of boots, and then he gave her a nice large bag. Not not far from the mill, there was a rabbit warren, and Puss resolved to catch some rabbits for dinner. So she put some lettuce leaves and fine parsley into her bag, went into the warren and held the bag very quietly open, hiding herself behind it. And a little greedy rabbits who knew no better ran into it to have a feast. Directly they were safe in. Puss pulled the string of the bag and carried them off to her master. The miller's son killed them and cooked one for dinner, but Puss took away the other, which was very fine one, and hung it up for their next day's meal. But although their latter was thus provided early the next day, Puss took a bag and went again into Warren, and in the same manner caught two more fine young rabbits, but instead of carrying them home, she walked to the king's palace and knocked at the door. The king's porter asked, who was there? I brought a present to the king, said the puss. Please let me see his majesty. The porter let her in, and when Puss came into the king's presence, she made a low bow and taking a fine rabbit out of her bag, said, my lord Marquis of Carabas sends this rabbit to your majesty with his respect. I am obliged to the Marquis, said the king, and, and he ordered his head cook to dress the rabbit for dinner. By the king's side sat his daughter, a very beautiful lady. She ordered one of the attendants to give Puss a good cup of cream, which she liked very much, and she went home and told her master all she had done. The miller's son laughed, but every morning Puss caught a rabbit and carried it to the palace with the same message. Now in the country there lived a cruel og who used to eat children. So everybody was afraid of him, but nobody could kill him. He was such a giant. One day, Puss went to call on him. He received a civilly, for he did not care to eat cats. So Puss sat down and began to talk. I hear, she said, great Og, that you are so clever that you can turn yourself into a creature you please. Yes, I can, said the Og. Dear me, said the puss, how much I should like to see your ogship do it. Then the og, who liked to show how clever he was, turned himself into a lion and roared so loudly that Puss was quite frightened and jumped out of the way. Then he changed back into an og again. Puss praised him a great deal and then said, can your ogship become a small animal as well as a large one? Oh, yes, said the vain Og. So he changed himself into a little mouse. Directly Puss saw him in this form, she jumped at him and killed him on the spot. The puss ran home and bade her master go and bathe in the river, and he should see that she would do for him. The miller's son obeyed, and while he was in the water, Puss took away all his clothes and hid them under a large stone. Now the king's carriage in the sight soon after, just as Puss had expected for his Puss had expected, for he was always drove in that direction and directly, and he saw it. She began to cry very loudly, help, help, for my lord, the Marquess of Carabas. The king put his head out and asked what was the matter. Oh, Majesty, said the puss, my master, the Marquis, was bathing and someone has taken all his clothes. He will catch the cramp and he'll be drowned. Then the king ordered one of his attendants to ride back to the palace and get a suit of his own clothes of Maracas, who had so often sent him gifts. He said, and when they were brought, Puss took them to her master and helped him to dress in them. Then the king ordered one of his attendants to ride back to the palace and get a suit of his own clothes for Maracas, who had so often sent him gifts, he said. And when they brought, Puss took them to her master and helped him to dress in them. The miller's son looked quite little like a gentleman in his king's clothes. And when he went, he thanked his majesty for them. The king asked him to go into the coach and he would drive him home. Then Puss told coachman where to go and ran on before and came to some reapers. Reapers, said she, if the king asks you whose field this is, say it belongs to Marquess of Carabas. If you don't say, you shall be chopped up as a small minced meat. The reapers were so frightened that they promised to obey her. And she ran on and told all the other laborers on the road to say the same. So when the king asked, to whom do these fine fields belong? The reapers answered, to the Marquess of Carabas. The herdsman said, the same of the cattle. And the king, turning to the miller's son, said, my lord, you have a fine property, but all had belonged really to Og, for it was to his castle the cunning cat had told the coachman to drive. At last the coach stopped at the og's castle, and Puss came out and bowing very low said, Your Majesty and the princess are welcome to the castle of my lord Marquis Carabas. The king was delighted, for it was indeed a very nice castle, full of riches. They sat down to a great feast with foods ordered to be served, and the king was so pleased with the miller's son and thought him such a good match for the princess that he invited him to court, and in a little while gave him his daughter for his wife and made him a prince. You may be quite sure that the miller's son was very grateful to Puss for his good fortune, and she never had to catch mice for her dinner any more, for dainty meat and the best cream were every day given to Puss in Boots. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys will enjoy this story, and I will see you guys in the next storytelling. Bye.